I think that any American ground invasion of Iran would be an absolutely ill-conceived disaster. Iran is a country 3 times the size of France, 4.5 times the size of Germany, okay, ringed by 3 mountain chains and defended by...
There's no reason to do it. There's no reason to do it, yes.
No
one here is in favor of that.
Yeah, no one should favor that, exactly. So I am still very much against any Americans ever dying in Iran for any reason, okay? And I've consistently been, though, against any form of foreign military intervention as part of regime change in Iran. And the principal reason why I engaged the Israelis in 2017 going into 2018, actually more 2018, was to try to stop, to try to prevent any Israeli bombing of Iran and to give reassurances that there was a path toward change from within Iran itself. All of that having been said, I watched what went on in this latest round of demonstrations beginning a little over a year ago, and the brutality with which this regime not only murdered Iranian teenagers and young people in the streets, but even tortured and raped Iranian young women in a movement largely led by women. And I'm also looking at the brutality of these attacks, which I believe were organized by the IRGC and certainly green-lighted by the IRGC and publicly praised by the Iranian leadership. I'm looking at the brutality of these attacks, the hostage-taking, and, the barbarity of what Hamas unfolded within the borders of Israel. And at this point, frankly, I have to say that I think the shrewdest and most effective solution would be for Israel not to engage in a ground invasion invasion is not the right word, because frankly, I have to admit to you, I see Gaza and the West Bank as part of Israel. I do believe in a greater Israel, at least as a strategic sphere. And so I don't call the Israeli military going into Gaza an invasion. But I think that the way to handle this situation is not for the Israelis to go into the meat grinder of Gaza and then risk an attack from the north by Hezbollah. I actually think the wisest move for them to make would be to attack Iran first. And if I were to give a piece of unsolicited and unpaid advice to the leadership in Israel, I would say, do not hit the nuclear facilities first. Even though this is what Netanyahu has been talking about, I think, for decades at this point, the nuclear infrastructure of Iran represents a tremendous capital investment of Iranian time, energy, and resources. It's a national asset of the Iranian people. And more importantly, and I think people in Mossad know this, the gas centrifuge structure of the Iranian atomic energy program has little to nothing to do with Iran's nuclear weapons development. Iran's nuclear weapons development is a separate track program of the kind that many countries use to clandestinely acquire nuclear weapons. I think it involves laser isotope enrichment, and I think it's deeply protected inside of mountains. So it's not going to solve the problem of Iranian nuclear weapons development, and it's going to alienate a large number of pro-Israeli Iranians who see that as the destruction of a national resource.
What should they hit?
I'll tell you exactly what they should hit. They should hit every base of the IRGC inside Iran, pulverize it, and they should hit every high-level regime target, all the ministries of the Islamic Republic, and certainly a decapitation strike on the office of the Supreme Leader. And then wait and see what the Iranian people do.
Before Vlad responds, I just want to say that I actually bet in this case that the people who should be listening to this, maybe they are listening to it right now. Just throwing that out there.
Okay.
So,
or they will be shortly.
Yeah.
I hope. Well, look. One assumes, one hopes that the Israeli command staff doesn't need our help, that kind of thing. That they have. Those are the conversations that are taking place right now in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Those are the conversations that are taking place right now in Jerusalem in the ministries. I'm not in the right now, but I imagine those are the conversations. The Israelis have not yet begun an invasion of. We're not going to call it invasion, but an incursion into the Gaza Strip. Obviously, the president of America is there now, buying time, trying to keep the Israelis from doing it. frankly, they have to blow something up because you're not going to survive for 5 minutes as a piñata in the Middle East, in the Levant, if you can be seen to have 1,400 of your citizens killed in an armed invasion, 3 battalions strong. Something does have to get blown up, and the Hamas does need to be destroyed. The Hamas, of course, is just a proxy force. The real enemy is in Tehran. This was a declaration of war, open war, by Tehran against Jerusalem and against America, which is why there are 2 American aircraft carrier groups, to a total of, I think, like 12 ships, aircraft support battleships, nuclear submarines, frigates, standing outside of Lebanon, willing to blow the hell out of the water, anything that moves, and to take over southern Lebanon if necessary, and to blow chunks of Tehran if they need to. Now, again, this could become a worldwide conflagration. It's possible, right? There would be Arab states that would have to respond if there was a full-on mobilization of a Yemenite, Syrian, Hezbollah proxies against other Arab countries. You could potentially have a blow up of the entire Middle East. You could have the Iranians have proxy forces and security forces and intelligence assets all over the Middle East, right? Partly this is the Obama administration releasing all that money to them, which wasn't a nice thing to do. I imagine Mr. Jorjani and Dr. Jorjani and I agree on that also.
Yeah,
right.
No doubt. Listen, I mean, but this is why these proxies are exactly why I think that the primary objective of the state of Israel has to be a change of the regime in Iran as quickly as possible. The Israelis have not been able to solve the problem in Gaza or in the West Bank for decades upon decades, okay? The solution,
There's no solution.
The solution to the problem in Gaza and the West Bank, and the solution to the problem of all these Iranian proxies in Shiite Arab states, is to change the regime in Tehran. And mark my words, the next Iranian regime will have a robust counterterrorism force, which will literally send Persians to fight in Gaza against Palestinians and together with the IDF. This will happen. And Israel needs a larger brother like that in the region, which is going to be committed longer term to cleaning up this mess that Iran made in the first place.
Let's say there was regime collapse tomorrow. What percentage of the population wants like a normal, like a return to the monarchy, or even like a liberal democratic, whatever, even a kind of slightly liberal Muslim-y version of that? What percentage of the population of Iranians?
First of all, I can give you a precise figure because the regime itself gave us a precise figure. During the uprising last year, going into the early part of this year, at one point, general strikes started to be organized. And the IRGC went out and did a kind of statistical analysis based on what percentage of the economic sector participated in the general strikes and other metrics. And this got leaked in the newspapers in Iran, that the IRGC's own estimate is that 84% of the country was against them, that only 16% of Iranians still supported the Islamic Republic.
So what the Iranian security services' own internal numbers say that 1 out of 6 citizens are on that.
They have 16% of the population and 84% of Iranians in the Islamic Republic.
Into a fraction. Convert that into a fraction. 1 out of 6 Persians support the regime.
Yeah, I would even say it's less than that, but yeah, definitely not
1
more
out of
than
7.
Definitely, yeah, maybe 1 out of 7. Now, but here's the really interesting thing is when you talk about being against the Islamic Republic, that breaks down in all kinds of ways too. There are people who are just sort of moderate Muslims, and they want some kind of a they want. I think everyone's agreed on a secular regime. No one wants Islam to play any official role in politics in Iran. I mean, from out of those who are opposed to the Islamic Republic, but they want some kind of moderate secular regime where people would still be nominally Muslim and Islam would be respected. But actually, that percentage is rather narrow. I would say that that's not more than 20% of the population. And that if you look at the youth in Iran, people age 20 or under, they are rabidly anti-Islamic. They are not just against the Islamic Republic. If you look at the kinds of social media that were coming from out of Iran during this last round of protests, people are burning Qurans. They're throwing away all kinds of Islamic religious paraphernalia. Large numbers of people are converting to some form of Zoroastrianism. Large numbers of people are part of a black metal subculture that is, frankly, essentially satanic. And so we see a social phenomenon in Iran.
It's performatively satanic, right? Not actually satanic. It's just like
it depends. Well, it depends what you mean by Satan. If as I do, you mean Prometheus, or his Iranian original Ahura Mazda, then it's positively and deeply satanic. In any case, the point is that it's not just a question of rejecting the Islamic Republic. There is a cultural revolution taking place in Iran, and it's driven by the youth. And that cultural revolution is going to determine the future of the Iranian-Israeli relationship. And I think that these two peoples, the Iranians and the Israelis, the Persians in particular, and the Israelis, are going to find themselves profoundly isolated and embattled within their region. And they're going to require each other as existential allies in the longer term, which is why Israel has to be very careful not to alienate the people who are its greatest long-term ally.
Okay, but so using your logic, we don't have to do anything. The regime will collapse on its own, and the Israelis don't need to strike anything.
No, they
6 out of 7.
Not at all.
Okay.
Look, the IRGC and the militia that it controls, it has a militia called the Basij. The Basij are like thugs.
Horrible people. Thugs. Yeah, I've seen them. They ride around on motorcycles. I've seen them.
Yeah, with chains and clubs and crap. Okay, they at the most have about 400,000 of these thugs. The IRGC itself is a force of roughly 200,000. This is what Israel needs to decimate. Israel has to decimate the repressive apparatus of the IRGC and its militia, its Basij. And it also, as I said, needs to hit key regime targets. It has to decapitate the Islamic Republic. Then I think it's in the hands of the Iranian people to pour out into the streets without the kind of repression they've faced thus far in the hundreds of thousands and topple what's left of this regime.